After Musharraf liberalized the media, Imran wasn't like a regular on talk shows. He had very little media attention. 2013 it really picked up. Like we were covering his jalsas, not like every day.
For me, it's the turning point was the big Lahore ka jalsa, right? Obviously, the lead up to it was the 2013 election.
I think Imran possesses one of the key traits to populist leaders, which is charisma.
Let's say flamboyant, cricketer, star person, good looking, etc., etc. But when did he become Pakistani media phenomenon?
I think when you compare him to everybody else on the national political stage right now, it's a competition that nobody can win. Hi, welcome to another episode of Unprecedented, where we're examining the media landscape in Pakistan. My name is Muna, and I'm going to introduce you to my co-host.
Hi, I'm Zebunnisa. I am a journalist and a journalism instructor. I've been in this field for like more than 20 years now, and which is why we have a lot to talk about. Muna is also a journalist and a journalism instructor, and we both talk journalism all the time. And so we thought we should talk to you guys about it as well. Muna, you want to take it from there?
Thank you for your feedback on the last episode. I really appreciate it. I also, of course, I'm grateful to CEJ for giving us this space, but I would like to give a special shout out to Hassan Haider, who is from my first batch of MSJ journalism students, who really honored me today by coming here to help us with the setup. So I appreciate that. We're going to dive right in. If you remember last time, we said that we were going to talk about Imran Khan. So I got a lot of feedback on that, a lot of like, oh my God. And I think it's because I set it up like that, oh my God. But we're going to start unpacking that. Zebunnisa.
Yes, Muna. So my question, Muna, is who is the most popular politician as far as the media goes?
Oh, okay. That's a nice surprise. I didn't think we were going to start like that. You really meant it when you said we're going unscripted.
Yeah.
Imran Khan.
Oh, Imran Khan, right?
Okay, but I'm throwing it back at you.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
So I think when we start talking about Imran as a media phenomenon, which is what this podcast, by the way, people, is about, I think what we want to do is look at it from a journalism perspective, right? Which is when it becomes very interesting to see when did Imran, who's a cricketer, who's like this, he was always a phenomenon, right? In a way, the very, I'm not going to use a specific word that's used, but let's say flamboyant, cricketer, star person, good looking, etc., etc. But when did he become Pakistani media phenomenon? I think, so I actually wrote it down yesterday. What instances? I think for me, it's the turning point was the big Lahore ka jalsa, right? Obviously, the lead up to it was the 2013 election for me. Yeah, but what do you think?
So, as a reminder to some of our journalism students, which is that Imran's been in politics. We hear about it, na 22 saal ki jiddo-jahad. But just a reminder that after Musharraf liberalized the media, Imran wasn't like a regular on talk shows. He had very little media attention. 2013 it really picked up. Like we were covering his jalsas, not like every day. But to me, the one thing that I remember is when he fell.
Yeah. Yeah.
The falling to me was like I think it was also a moment made for television when he was on his hospital bed and he asked people to go out and vote for him. I think that was really something. I can still remember it. And, Nawaz went to visit him, all of that. So I think something really captured the media's imagination when that happened. And then, of course, the dharna. Dharna, which I'd like you to talk about a little bit.
I think the dharna was, for me, so I mean, we should probably bring it back a little as well, on, okay, so he became this media, he is a media phenomenon. and we'll talk about how that feeds into each other. But the why did he become? I mean, I've been thinking about it. What makes a popular politician? Popularity is also very arbitrary, right? So it's not like other politicians in Pakistan haven't been popular before that. They've been winning elections. Bibi came, she brought with her this a tragic backstory and all of that, right? But what makes Imran just click so well? And I mean, I can start with, obviously, it's the rise of TV media, right? Which is what was missing previously. And then the rise of social media
Of
as
course.
well, right? So my question is, so Imran becomes this media phenomenon for, in whatever instance, the dharna, etc., etc. But what are the traits? Why did he become this? What has made him so popular, not just with the people, but with the media itself, actually?
I think Imran possesses one of the key traits to populist leaders, which is charisma.
Yeah.
And I think when you compare him to everybody else on the national political stage right now, he just, it's a competition that nobody can win. I can't think of anyone that can match him at the moment. This doesn't mean that nobody can catch up to him, but at the moment, he just has it. I also think, like other leaders, now there is a lot of literature on populist leaders and popular movements, and they contain names like Bolsonaro, they contain names like Donald Trump, Duterte in the Philippines, Modi in India, and Erdogan. So there's a lot of similar themes there, but they are anti-elite. They are anti-establishment. And I'm using the word anti-establishment not necessarily the way we use it, just as they're anti-popular.
Status quo,
yes,
generally.
Yes. Yeah. And they came at a time, and they all in various ways have used social media platforms to organize. They are also anti-press. That's something else that they have. So I think that's very, very interesting that they're anti-press. They've said fake news, and yet we are very reliant on them in the media to sort of report everything they're saying. I might be jumping the gun here, but I think that's what makes him so unique.
I think obviously Imran is a populist leader, right? With all the, whether it's right or left, it doesn't really matter. The populism is there. And of course, these traits run through. But I think the biggest trait that Imran has is, which others don't have right now, and at least as far as Pakistani politics goes, Imran is not scared of the media. He's unafraid of the media, as is his party. And it's not just him, because it's sort of filtered. I've been thinking about it for a while, especially yesterday and the day before yesterday, and we're talking, the Sunday 8th September Jalsa, which, frankly speaking, I genuinely thought would not be as good as it turned out to be, because he is a populist leader who's in jail. And the idea of, and people throw this word around a lot when all of Imran's critics do, that it's a cult party, that it's a cult following, which most populist leaders end up becoming in a way. But the thing is that cult का मतलब ये है कि अगर वो जेल में हो तो फिर वो लोग निकलेंगे नहीं ज़्यादा, but लोग निकले, right?
And despite a lot of the odds.
Yeah, but that's the whole beauty, and which is what we want to come to. What makes Imran a media phenomenon is actually, in my opinion, also the PTI's media strategy, which in my opinion is probably the most brilliant I have ever seen. In many ways better than Modi's, actually. See, they've had to arm twist a lot of people, and they have RSS, which is an actual militia, right, on the ground. These guys have been, Imran has been in jail for now what, more than a year? Yeah. And he's been out of power since 2022. And I work in a newspaper, right? I watch the news all the time. And hasn't been a single day since the vote of no confidence that at least the second lead has not been Imran or something related to Imran or the PTI or Bushra Bibi or it has to be something related to the opposition. So their media strategy, I think, should be taught actually. And unfortunately, in my opinion, I think the others, that's where they lag as well. Populism ka to you can't do much about it, but at least fix your strategy, right? Yeah. Muna disagrees.
No, I agree with
but-
everything you said, but that populism ka kuch nahi kar sakte. So I think, I said this earlier, so I hope that more than the Saas Bahu drama, a more toxic relationship is between populism and the press. Now, I didn't come up with this. This is, excuse me, I have to check my notes, a Brazilian journalist who's now a postdoc research fellow. And I read a paper by her, and she was saying how media outlets benefit commercially from populist attacks, but at the same time, they're jeopardizing journalism's integrity by doing so. It is so much coverage of populist leaders. And I asked this last time, what is it at the cost of? He's in prison. He's still giving press conferences in a way. People are out there getting his reports, and sometimes probably maybe to the harm of the PTI leadership who's trying something. I get a little confused about who's in charge of the PTI right now. I'll just park that. So I think it's a toxic relationship, and it still comes back. And I think I'm going to always try to find a way to bring it back to business models, which is, is the press dependent on Imran to keep their content going? And even though Imran Khan has a brilliant social media strategy and media strategy, and they have, volunteers of people getting his message out, I think we should also say that Imran Khan still needs the media.
Of course.
He still needs mainstream and traditional media. It's not like if tomorrow journalists decide, for whatever reason, let's say they decide to protest the way Gandapur talked about journalists, and they're like, we're not giving you coverage. The message will still get out. But with people not able to access Twitter like they used to, and just a reminder of the demographic, it's not all social media users. Now, this country is much bigger than social media. I think it will be. I think it'll be problematic. So,
yeah. So I think I have a more doomy, gloomy as far as traditional media goes. Of course, Imran needs the media. I feel like it's shifted to what kind of media he now needs, because media is sort of diffused a lot, right? The media definitely needs Imran. Again, I'm using media very loosely.
I know. I feel like journalist.
Journalists, sure, but media, yes, right? But I think that when we're talking about Imran needing the media, I think the newer concept of vlogs, podcasts perhaps, but vlogs, YouTubers as such, cashing in a lot on Imran and the PTI. It's like they're riding on their coattails, like in a way, कि भाई कर लो, क्योंकि फिर views भी आएंगे, ratings भी आएंगी. But the thing is that where does traditional media lag in all of that, and why does the traditional media mainstream media feel like they need to, I'm going to use the word pander too, but I'm not using it in a snarky way. And the way I'm actually worried about all of this going through some sort of backlash also tells you a lot about how traditional media sees populist leaders, because one is scared of being labeled an anti-people elite journalist, which is what populists do. Trump has done it very successfully in the US. And I think the response to that has been the New York Times and others becoming even more isolated and even more inward looking. So there will not be any sort of a counter to whoever they are supporting, which I think is a failure of elite media. Jisko elite media kehte hain, populists. what happens then is that there's a vacuum, and in that vacuum you get all these YouTube people, and that's where journalism just goes away and opinion making comes in, and then you and I sit and we fact check, and then we're again labeled. And then what that does to a mainstream journalist like me, for example, as an editor, will be that I will always be scared to counter the populist narrative, even if what we're doing is not anti a particular party, but just fact checking someone and saying, oh, no, no, that's not how it was, or actually, this is just bad form, or Gandapur Saab, don't talk like that about journalists, etc., etc. But you have to couch it in a whole lot of balancing it out, because there's this idea that mainstream journalism is anti people because the populace said so, right? And this is not just Imran.
Right.
This
So we're looking
runs
at it.
through
Yeah.
it.
So I gave you
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah.
there are several ways that it's successful. So now you can get your own set of facts.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying this about Imran, but like you got your own sets of facts for climate change, for the vaccine, you name it, you can find material on the internet that suits your liking. Now, when Bolsonaro was in Brazil, according to this paper that I read, going at it with the media and naming them all kinds of things, and they've documented the rise in the paper that I'll link to of attacks on the press that he did. You had a paper called FSP that chose this opportunity to contextualize and say, okay, folks, this is what's happening, and we're going to contextualize it, and this is a threat to democracy, and we want you to subscribe to us. And the New York Times did this a little bit when democracy dies in darkness.
Yeah.
I hope I got that phrase right, but they used this as a campaign to mobilize. FSP did it as well, and they sort of, in a way, stood up to the bully. I don't know who's really done it here, but legacy media outlets in this country, of which that's the Dawn Group, that's the Jung Group, that's Navai Vakt, it's also Business Recorder.
Yeah.
But the first three, I will say, have a long history with every government. Every government. And this explains little things like I've met people, both in Pakistan and the United States, who have told me they stopped subscribing to Dawn because Dawn went anti-Imran Khan. Then Imran Khan told a reporter in jail that I thought Dawn was against me, but now they're covering my trial. And people are like, but many people haven't heard that. But, you know, I think sometimes maybe we need to go back to the classroom and remind people, everybody, what is journalism? So I think that when it comes to populist readers, yes, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm questioning the role that the media can take. And the reason the media doesn't do this collectively is because unlike other countries where there are maybe popular, like in the United States, let's say, or Brazil, there is more support, institutional support for journalism. And in Pakistan, it is a weak institutional support. I mean, I can't even count how many press unions we have.
A lot, apparently. But the thing is, I'm not part of
Right.
a lot of them, unfortunately.
Right.
I think, so I agree on the institutional support thing. My problem actually is, I think, for example, and I'm going to go back, I keep going back to the same thing. You know, post-Gaza war, for example, right? I think the failure of the liberal media is very evident, and liberal media does fail generally, like, you know, in these situations because it wants to play safe that way.
Both
and
sides.
It doesn't know how to cater to demands that, okay, we, you know, the thing is, it's the way the liberal media in the US looked down on Trump and just said, you know, this guy is not, whatever. It's the same way, by the way, Imran was treated initially.
Yes.
This guy, he's dumb.
Yes.
He's stupid.
Yes.
Actually, he's
And
not. That's the whole point.
His supporters were
Yeah,
a bit
they're stupid.
defense types.
They're dumb.
Yeah.
They're apolitical. Now,
Yes.
see, the thing is, I can write a paper on it and
Yes.
explain
Yes.
the evolution.
Yes.
But when you're on TV or just writing an editorial or just doing a little, like, you know, it's very base analysis on TV in any case, right? This doesn't work very well, the looking down on. Pakistani media, unfortunately, started with the looking down on and mocking, and then went all cuckoo and went completely gung ho. There's been no middle ground on, okay, what makes this thing tick, right? For me personally, I think the fact that you're trolled a lot, right? In today's populism is not just street politics, it's a lot of online trolling or getting bullying, getting after people. We had to write a whole joint statement as women journalists in 2020, a bunch of us. We had to go to the National Assembly Human Rights Committee and read out those messages, which we did think were part of a campaign. And that's what happens. If you're trolled enough online, you stop saying stuff. The fact that I'm worried about how to choose my words carefully also tells you the power of the individual or the politics that you're dealing with. So instead of ignoring it, I think what a lot of the mainstream media and legacy journalists have done is that they've either gone just backed off and said, let the YouTubers handle it, or they've really taken to this and become YouTubers themselves, right? Because I can't do that in a more sedate media setting, which is your legacy media, which is not going to go wild, but I can do it on my YouTube channel and, go wild. And like you said, everyone has their own set of facts. So that helps a populist party as well. And let's be very honest, just coming back to this does not mean that any other party is better or worse. It just means that one party or one individual, political individual, has managed to crack the populist code. Everyone else wants to. Aaj ka Dawn ka headline, one of the headlines is Nawaz is looking to come up with some sort of a counter Imran's popularity narrative. See, you've been in politics, Nawaz Sharif Saab, for like a century, and you still have to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Yeah.
And you've got a daughter who actually can be a populist politician because she's got all the makings for it.
Yes.
Right? But you guys are just not there. You haven't been able to get the language.
Mariam is a bit more tone deaf. Imran isn't.
No,
he really,
he's not.
that's where media strategy comes in. But yeah, not all parties are the same. But I do want to add that when you guys went up, when the women journalists went up with that petition, I think one distinction to make is that you were also being trolled by government ministers, and people in power were also doing the party officials. This isn't a bunch of anonymous online supporters. These are they're people. They're people with positions of power. One example to remind you guys is when Asma Shirazi wrote a piece about Bada Ghar for BBC Urdu, 2021, she got trolled for something she didn't say. The allegations were that you're writing about Bushra Bibi. She got trolled not by regular people on social media, but she got trolled by Shehbaz Gill, by Shireen Mazari, the International Federation of Journalists.
Had to take out
yes,
yeah.
I think it was the IFJ. They came out with a statement. So let me just make the distinction that there are also levels of trolling. Yeah, that there are also levels of trolling.
And I think that's something we tried to say, that when you have dog whistle attacks, you can always tell when someone's doing that, right? Because it's an indication. Now, this person is open season. Go after them, right?
Yeah.
But you need to bring it right back to journalism. So, for example, if you were teaching me, and if I were your student, and I say, okay, so we have this situation. How do journalists cope with this or deal with this? As a journalist, how do you report on a populist politician or a populist party without look, we all have our own political likes and dislikes. And by the way, again, I'm going to say it every episode, by the way, there is no neutrality in journalism. There should not be neutrality. It's called objectivity, all right? And I was reading yesterday that partly why legacy media sort of floundered a little in other popular, Trump particularly, is because they tried to do the balance it out, and we're going to be objective about things. That is sometimes seen as anti-people by a lot of people who think that elite media caters to elite interests and that they will balance things out by catering to both sides, both sidism in a way, especially, for example, in wars and conflicts and, disparities between the global north and global south. That is where your populist takes those ideas and then runs with them. We've seen a lot of religious right parties do that in Pakistan as well, right? Actual, genuine leftist causes, for example, which are genuine, right? But then you will use nationalism or religious nationalism and just take it out of context and run with it. And when the media says, hang on, that's there, but this is not the place to say it, they're anti people. How does that work if you were to be asked that?
Well, just as a quick sidebar, I read up on how objectivity as a press concept was done in America, because newspaper owners, the first ones, really back in the day, back in when print was the only form of news consumption, realized, so they started out as partisan, and then they realized that they need to have a range of voices to get more audiences.
Yeah.
So see how the commercial model is important to understand. So objectivity was created for that reason. Think of it like तुम भी खुश हो जाओ, मैं भी खुश हो जाऊं, सब आ जाएं. But we also know that's not how it's worked. To go back to how do we teach students, so I found a paper by a Dutch professor of communication from the University of Amsterdam. They wrote it in 2018, but I think some of the rules still apply. I'm going to link to it and just give you a few of the points, which I think I said already, one, that don't cover every single tweet. Because what happens when we do stories around tweets is that we are passive recipients. Yes, what we're doing is unhone ye kaha, and we write it and there's no contextualizing. We don't get an opportunity. They said a great thing, which is, would you cover a press release, a corporate press release, the same way you do a tweet? Because when you get a corporate press release, our first job is ugh. Yeah. But if we have to cover it, we contextualize it. We ask questions. We make sure that we are being transparent in everything. The same should be true. I thought that was a great trick. Look at tweets like that. But they said something. Report on populist actors like you would other leaders. But also report on they're not like other leaders. So what does that mean? So it means don't do the both side coverage. Make sure you're placing supporters. So if you say supporters said this. So I think a little bit like I thought of the Gandapur thing, that Gandapur's statement on women and journalists is not indicative of how the entire party thinks. But of course it's outlandish, it's great television. And we want to cover things that are great because you want the clickbaity. So I think we have to kind of contextualize it. What else did they say? Not all tweets are news. Be factual about non-facts. Contextualize, ask for details, and be non-combatant if you're called the enemy. Again, I think this is great for print and digital, the contextualizing. I think it's hard for TV screens where everything is sound bites. And that's the culture of television, and sometimes I'm never going to get a job in TV news, so it's okay. Yeah. But I really think TV news just messed it up for all of us. Sorry, but...
Yeah. And they said my favorite song, Video Killed the Radio Star. I think video killed everyone in journalism. I'm never getting a job in TV either. So
I'm not teaching this semester, but you're teaching at CEJ. Yeah. So how are you going to... I mean, we've got one election coming up, there's an election coming up in the US, which will make for good instruction purposes.
Yes.
And in Pakistan, any moment there could be an election coming up. So how would you take it?
I've actually been thinking of the American election in a very different way now, right? Mostly because of Kamala Harris, Biden, I think the idea that it was easier to take sides originally. Since then, since October 7th, it's much harder for a lot of people to reconcile with the Democrats as well, right? And how does the media perform their job? And the fact that, frankly speaking, for me, it's not sudden, but it's just far easier to show the failings of traditional media. So, see, Democracy Now! Democracy Now! You can subscribe to it, it's a great place. Democracy Now! Will cover the American elections, obviously, very, very starkly differently than, say, the New York Times or CNN, right? And we're not even going to Fox right now, etc. So, how do you deal with something like that? I was reading up, that journalists tend to, because when they're backed into a corner, they tend to equivocate, like false equivalence with people. So I'm become very, very careful with, saying something, even when we're talking about populism, we're making sure that we're saying, okay, Imran is populist on a Pakistani standard. Modi is populist on an Indian. They're not the same people. It's just an overall. It's an overall ideology. It's sort of like an overall, just a trait. Populism. That doesn't mean that they're the same people or their politics is exactly the same. So when we're reporting on populism, for example, because we're backed into a corner, we also lash out, which is what Mona did say, avoid combat as a journalist, right? Um, Try and do stuff with facts. And facts, by the way, always win, I feel, which is what I told my students yesterday, right? So the fact will win. You might be trolled, whatever, be trolled. The thing is, your fact is still fact. You've done the job. And at the end of the day, like I always say, good journalism is good journalism, and bad journalism is bad journalism. And at the end of the day, good journalism stays because the staying power is longer. और आप पिछले 4 साल की स्टोरीज भी देखें जो अंसार अब्बासी साहब की स्टोरी थी व्हाट्सएप कॉल वाली एक थी पैनामा पेपर्स के दौरान, राइट? It has stayed.
Yes.
See, the thing is, he's there, he's doing his work. It has stayed.
Yes.
That story was there, right? That's what matters at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters, really. But that's just me and you saying that.
No, I think we are supported by a lot of people who
silent
think that
majority journalists who are worried also at which point journalism became this.
Right.
This idea that you have to either pander to a populist figure or somehow, I don't know, be part of the combat. But that's not my job either. See, I'm not going to celebrate someone being jailed either. That's also not my job. My job is to say, okay, this person was incarcerated day before yesterday. Why? What happened? What led to it? That's it. That's my job.
Yes.
All right.
So just like Imran has been charged with corruption, does not mean he is corrupt.
Yes.
We should use the same lens for everyone else.
Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, that's basic, but I felt the need to suddenly, it came from somewhere that I should just remind everybody that. I think one of the things we talk about in the classroom is that recognize your biases. I think because you're human and you'll have them. I will always be pro-women. But that doesn't mean that, like, doesn't mean, you know what it means, recognize them and also know that you can do your job as a journalist, because many of the principles of journalism, actually, they've not changed. Diverse sources, try to get it from the opponent, get something, let them know that, look, I tried. Transparency is the key to journalism, and that hasn't changed. Also, I do think for journalism students, I would really recommend reading some stuff about populism, because one of the traits these populist leaders have is that they need the media and they use the media to get to their goal. And their goal is what unites populists, Modi and Imran, is access to political power. Once they are in power, all of them share the same trait, which is that they stifle the media. Yes, and the stifling has been done in forms of intimidation using trolls. It has been done in using government, holding back. You can tell now when someone is in power, which media is doing well or not, because it's, those images. When you were talking about images, the images of those little meetings that Imran had with the media and media personnel. This wasn't open to everyone.
But those images, those optics, and I've been thinking about that since the last time we talked about it, was so good. See, just
yes,
as a
I wanted you to talk
communication
about
student, the fact that there's this guy and he's sitting there and he's also invited people that are seen to be somewhat critical, liberal journalists, and he's sitting there and he's saying, वो COVID का बताओ फिर. That's what I said. He's not afraid of the media. You see, that's the beauty of the whole situation that Imran is in. Now, I have a feeling that if Bhutto were alive right now, he would somewhat be similar. He would be unafraid of the media, right? Bhutto was unfortunate. He's not around when the TV and social media was there because, see, his sound bites, populists use a lot of bites to get to people, right? I think for me, the most effective communication thing that Imran has ever done is the right? मेरे पास खत है, right? And you're like, कौन सा खत है? किसका खत है? क्या है? And वो खत जो है, जो पता नहीं, like Muna said, it could be his grocery list, right? That day. The thing is that khat has sustained not just Pakistani media and YouTube, but American media and YouTube. I mean, just imagine there are journalists. And let me just this disclaimer. I don't know if it's true or not. Like, whatever. This is not a political comment. The fact that there's a paper that was waved around and people bought it en masse, bought it, right? I don't think Nawaz Sharif can wave a paper around and do that, right? I just don't think so at all. That's just it. That's the power of he's standing there. He's at the edge of the thing. He's being thrown out and he's like waving this around. And now you have a whole bunch of people saying, yeah, but it led to a hearing. I mean, in the US. When does that happen over here? It's mind-boggling, but it's it's brilliantly done. I might sound a little gushy, but I think as communication student, not as a journalist, if I were just doing lobbying, it's part of my degree, my master's degree was lobbying for, electoral lobbying. I think this is just brilliant. I don't know how they do it.
So I wrote a column last year called Angertainment about television and what sells. It's based on somebody who I love, Neil Postman. But I think we're going to save that. Digital is the hope. But this doesn't mean TV it's on its way out. Yeah. But I think that's what we're going to save for another time. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. And I want to say that subscribe करें और like करें. मेरा बहुत दिल करता है कहने को. Yes, thank you.